In this lesson, we're going to create the key lock that's on the weapon. Alright, so the key lock is this little detail here, and on older weapons it's not really there, but for this one I thought it would be kind of neat. It's a neat little detail, and I wanted to add it to it. I thought it made it look pretty cool. So let's go ahead and add that to it. So looking at our left view, let's go ahead and hide the frame. So right click and hide selection, and let's also hide that hammer. And let's take a look at this piece here. So you can see a couple of things. We've got this screw that's in there. We're going to make that a separate piece, but you can see its overall shape. We've got kind of this little ridge here where the thumb can fit into and push on that whenever the weapon needs to be fired. And then we also have kind of this little piece here. So let's start out with the main feature of that. That's going to be the cylinder, and everything kind of builds off of that. So let's go ahead and go to cylinder. We're going to left click and drag this cylinder out. Get about the right radius there. At least get close anyway. And then we'll just kind of put that into position. So you can hit Alt X and you can kind of reposition that how you need to. I think that looks pretty good right there. And let's go ahead and start adding in our detail to this. Now before we do that, let me go ahead and move this out in the X and let me unhide everything. And I just want to push this right up against the edge of the frame there, just so that way whenever I'm looking at the detail and I'm switching back and forth, I want to be able to see it on the weapon itself. Alright, so let's go ahead and select the hammer in the frame. Let's hide that for right now. And let's go ahead and convert this object to editable poly. Let's make sure we select it, of course. And let's go to polygon mode, select this polygon on the front, and we'll simply inset that. Now it may be kind of difficult to see through that, so if you hit F2 you can actually turn that shading off, and that makes it a little bit easier to see there. So it looks like 0.07 is a good value for us. Let's hit OK on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to thicken this up just a little bit. So let's hit grow one time, and I'm going to pull that out, make that a little bit thicker there. It is a pretty big piece, okay, that the thumb can actually push on, so we want to make sure that it's large enough that it would feel as though it could be pushed. All right. Let's go ahead and add in a segment right down the center of this thing. So I'm just going to add it right about here. So, and then we're going to take these two polygons right here on the front, and I'm just going to pull those out in the Y. So, or well, in this case, in the X. So pull that out. Let's go to vertex mode. I'm going to take these and actually scale those down in the Y like so, just to match the reference image there. So we've got that part started, and the next thing I want to do is go ahead and get the next part. So let's go ahead and go to polygon mode, and let's select all of these polygons right here. Oops. And let's hit F2 just so that way you can see which ones I'm actually selecting. Let's go to our left view, hitting L on the keyboard, and we're going to extrude that out. Now I'm going to extrude it as a group, so let's go ahead and take this amount down. Let's set it to 1 just so we can see that easier. And then I'm also going to straighten up that edge. So let's align that. I believe it's going to be the X direction. Yep, there we go. And let's pull that out to the end. Now from here I'm going to add in another segment right here. So we can do that just by going to Edit and Swift Loop. Let's go ahead and add that segment. Double click on that loop under Edge mode, and let's go ahead and line that in the X direction as well. And let's just put that right up against that corner there. So now what we can do is go ahead and go to polygon mode and select all those polygons on the end and just scale those up in the Y, so that way it matches the image. Alright, there we go, looking good. Next thing we want to do is we want to add a segment in here to help us get that curve in there. So I'm going to add in a single segment right now. So under edge mode, just select this edge and hit ring, or you can select one, hold shift, and select the next one to do the same thing, and we'll use connect. Okay. Now with that, let's go ahead and scale that down in the Y, and that'll kind of bring that down to the edge. And I want to make sure that this edge right here is still straight, okay, or at least close to it. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but still somewhat straight. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale it in the X just to kind of relax that, make it a little straighter, and then grab my move tool and pull that back toward the edge here. So just like that. All right, so that's looking good. Let's go ahead and get the detail that we need in the center of this. So this is going to be a little bit different. I actually need to hit Alt-X so I can see this. Let's go to polygon mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of these polygons right here. Okay. So let's hit delete. And then I'm going to go to edge mode. I'm going to select these two polygons. Actually, I'm going to select all of these right here. And hold down Shift, drag that down. And I'm going to drag it to where this corner meets here. So just to kind of show you that again, let's focus in on that. Let's go ahead and hold Shift, drag that down to where those corners meet. And it'll make it really easy for me to go ahead and just select those vertices and weld. Okay. And we'll weld that. And we're pretty close. We don't have to be exact or anything like that. So let's go to edge mode, select these two edges, and we're going to hit bridge. Do the same thing here. I'm going to bridge that. Looking good. And then finally, I want to go ahead and select this polygon right here, and I want to extrude that back into the key lock. And so we'll extrude that back. Let's do -0.1. It doesn't have to be real deep or anything like that. And that looks pretty good. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what it's going to look like as it's smoothed. So if we go ahead and smooth this out using Turbo Smooth, you can see it gets really blobby. Turn on that isoline display and we can see exactly where we need to go ahead and put our segments. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to edge mode, show end result, and go to Swift Loop. And I'm going to hit 2 on the keyboard so that way I can see my edges in that original cage. I'm going to put a loop here at the edge, also one right here. See how it sharpens that up there. And then I want to go ahead and create a loop right here. Okay, it sharpens up that edge there, and let's cut right across the top like so. See how it brings that key lock all together. We get that little groove in there. Now with that groove, you'll notice that on the reference image, that groove kind of blends down into the rest of this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take care of that. We can go ahead and weld those together so that way it goes right down into these vertices here. We'll take care of that here in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and make an edge right along here so that way it kind of hardens that up, and then we'll also create one here so that way it becomes a little bit more square. And actually, let's go right about here. I don't want it to be that square. Okay, put one right in there. Yeah, you know what? Let's remove that one. Let's just put it right here. I think that kind of gets us. Yeah, not really. Let's go ahead and pull it right about here. Maybe a little bit more to the center. Just trying to get a good relaxing look on that. Okay. And then finally we need to add a segment right across the top here, both sides. So that way we get that nice circular cylindrical rim there. And then we'll add one to the inside. Okay. And then let's take this polygon and let's inset that one time. Okay. It doesn't really matter how large that is. Okay, we'll just leave it just like that. Okay, so there we go. We've got that lock started. Now there is just a little piece that's missing here on this. And what I want to do is I want to take this edge and this edge, and I actually want to move that back. Okay, kind of push it to where it's even here. So it creates this kind of little loop right here. Let's push that over in the Y just a bit. And let's do the same thing right up here. Let's grab this vertex here. Pull that down a little bit closer. And do the same thing here. And I grabbed the wrong one. Let's grab the next one in line there. There we go. So that kind of gives us the shape that we were hoping for there. Alright, so now that we've got that, now I can come in and I can kind of square off the edge of that. Because if I look at that, it's a little too round in my opinion. I want it to square off just a little bit more. So I'm going to come in and add just a loop. Yeah. Let's go ahead and actually just take these vertices right here and let's push those forward in the X a little bit. And that'll kind of square that off a little bit more. Alright, great. So now let's take care of this back part. It needs to flow into the rest of this. And so I'm going to turn off show end result. And I'm going to come in, I'm actually going to weld or target weld these points together. So target weld these to one another, and we've actually got a loop in there that's really close to that other edge. Let's do this instead. Before we actually target weld that, let me hit Control Z one time. Let's actually take these 2 points and weld those together to a single point there. Let's do the same thing on the bottom. And we'll weld that. Okay, and then I'm going to take one of these edges and just simply get rid of it. So Control Backspace. It was adding a little bit too much and it doesn't really help. And even if we take a look at our Turbo Smooth, it doesn't change anything about our model. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on with that. So what I want to do is I want to go to Target Weld, and I'm going to target weld this down, and then down to here. Okay, continue on. And I'm going to do that all the way down to this. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and take this edge and hit Control Backspace. Notice how that comes down and starts to loop down. And then I can add that loop back if I need to. But let's take a look at it with Turbo Smooth, and it rounds off, and it looks pretty good. Happy with the way that looks so far. Let's look at that. I want to add, let me take this loop right here. Let me pull that forward just right here. And then I'm going to add another loop right next to it. And try to anyway. It doesn't look like it wants me to do that, so let's go to Edge Mode and select it right through the middle, just like that. And then we'll connect it with our own custom edge. So we'll connect that. Let me go ahead and slide that toward here. And then I'm just going to take these edges right here. Try to get all of those selected there. Make sure you grab these little edges right across the top and the bottom there. And let's pull that down in the X. So it kind of swoops on down like this. Okay. And Turbo Smooth, you can kind of see how that's swooping down into that. And looking pretty good. You know, looking at that, maybe I don't know if I really like that anymore. I was kind of thinking I like that idea, but I'm not so sure. I think it looks pretty good without that. Just makes sense for it to be just like that. All right, so there we have our lock there. We've got that in place. Take a look at our final details if we want to make any quick changes or anything like that. I think I'm looking pretty good. The only thing that we need to change is this set of polygons right here. It looks like they got pulled out by accident. So let me go ahead and grab my Move tool, push those back underneath that cylinder. And there we go. All right, great. So now we've got that set. In our next lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to continue adding our details in. So we want to start creating things like these little screws and screw heads and things like that. So we'll get into creating those next and getting those placed in.